Ethan Hale had learned many things since joining the interstellar service, but one lesson stood above all others. Space did not forgive mistakes. The Trade Station K floated at the edge of a busy route, a massive ring of metal filled with hundreds of species. Ships came and went every hour. Cargo moved through long halls. Laws changed from deck to deck, depending on who held power there. Humans were new to this part of space, and most species still saw them as strange, fragile creatures who survived only because of tools and rules. Ethan did not care much about that. He did his job. He worked in logistics, checking cargo paths, managing supply routes, and making sure nothing blocked emergency corridors. It was boring work most days, but it paid well, and it kept him away from combat zones. He had seen enough danger during his early service years. That morning felt normal. The station lights glowed a soft white. Gravity held steady. The hum of life support systems echoed through the wide service corridor as Ethan walked, checking a data pad. Behind him followed Leary. She was small, barely reaching his waist. Her species came from a low-gravity world, making them light and thin-boned. Leary's skin held a pale blue tint, smooth and unmarked. Her large, dark eyes watched everything with quiet alertness. She wore a simple service uniform, too loose for her tiny frame. Officially, she was assigned to maintain Ethan's work section, cleaning, sorting tools, organizing small tasks. Unofficially, she was treated as invisible by most of the station. Leary rarely spoke unless spoken to. Ethan had noticed that from the first day. She moved carefully, always staying out of the way. When others passed, she lowered her gaze. It bothered him more than he liked to admit. "Inventory check today," Ethan said without looking back. "Shouldn't take long." "Yes, human Ethan," Leary replied softly. He had told her she could just call him Ethan. She still used the full title. He had stopped correcting her after the 5th time. They reached a maintenance junction near one of the outer cargo rings. Warning lines marked the floor near a sealed airlock. Ethan paused, frowning at his pad. "That's odd," he muttered. "Pressure readings spiked here last night." Leary stepped closer, peering at the display even though she likely couldn't read human symbols. "Is danger?" she asked quietly. "Probably nothing," Ethan said. "Still, protocol says we check." He moved toward the control panel beside the airlock. The corridor was empty, quiet except for the distant rumble of engines docking far away. That was when the alarm screamed. A sharp, piercing sound ripped through the hall. Red lights flashed. Before Ethan could react, the airlock panel sparked. Then the floor shook. The sealed door behind them buckled inward as explosive bolts failed. A violent rush of air tore through the corridor, dragging loose tools, dust, and debris toward the opening. Ethan staggered, grabbing a railing. "Pressure breach," the system announced in a flat voice. Leary screamed. She was lighter than a human, much lighter. The sudden force lifted her off her feet, pulling her toward the tearing door. Her fingers scraped against the floor, failing to find grip. Ethan saw it happen in a single frozen second. He dropped his pad and lunged. His fingers closed around Leary's arm just as she was lifted fully into the air. The force nearly tore her from his grasp. Pain shot up his shoulder, but he locked his grip and slammed his other hand around a support beam. The pull was brutal. Leary cried out, clutching at him with both arms now, her small body shaking violently. Her eyes were wide with terror, fixed on the open void beyond the broken door. Ethan braced his boots against the floor, muscles burning as he held on. "I've got you," he shouted, though the rushing air nearly stole his voice. "I won't let go," the corridor screamed around them. Objects flew past. The temperature dropped fast. Ethan reached with one hand, slamming the emergency seal button. The system hesitated, then responded. Heavy blast shutters slammed down from the ceiling. The rush of air slowed, then stopped completely. Silence fell like a weight. Ethan collapsed to his knees, still holding Leary. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Leary began to shake. Not just fear, full body tremors. She clung to Ethan's arm with all her strength, pressing her face into his chest. Her breathing was fast and uneven. "It's okay," Ethan said softly, his heart still racing. "You're safe now." She did not respond. Station security arrived minutes later, sealing the area and escorting them to a safe zone. Medics checked Ethan's shoulder and declared it strained but usable. Leary refused to let go. When the medic tried to take her for evaluation, she made a sharp sound of panic and wrapped herself tighter around Ethan's arm. "It's all right," Ethan said quickly. "I'll stay with her." The medic hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, but keep her calm." That turned out to be easier said than done. Even after the alarms ended, even after the lights returned to normal, Leary would not release him. She followed him step for step, her small hands gripping his sleeve or wrist. If he stopped, she stopped. If he moved, she moved. Other workers noticed. Whispers spread. "A servant bonded to a human. That species doesn't do that. She should be reassigned." Ethan heard it all. He ignored them. In the quiet of his assigned quarters, Ethan finally sat down, letting out a long breath. Leary remained standing close, her hand still on his arm. "Leary," he said gently, "you're safe here, you can let go." Slowly, she lifted her head. Her eyes were still wide, but something else shone there now. Not fear alone, something deeper. "You did not release me," she said softly. "Well, yeah," Ethan replied. "That's what people do." Her grip tightened slightly. "In my culture," Leary said, choosing her words carefully, "when one is taken by the void, others look away. It is expected." Ethan frowned. "That's not right." "It is normal," she said. "We are small, replaceable." Ethan felt something twist in his chest. "Not to me," he said firmly. "You're not replaceable." Leary stared at him as if trying to understand a language she had never heard before. "I felt your pain," she said. "Your muscles strained, your breathing changed. Still, you held." "That's what humans do," Ethan replied. That night, Leary did not sleep in the service alcove assigned to her. She sat on the floor near Ethan's bed, her back against the wall, watching the door. When he woke in the morning, she was still there. From that day on, Leary followed Ethan everywhere. Not because she was ordered to, but because, in the moment the void tried to claim her, a human had chosen her life over his safety. And her world had quietly, completely changed. The next few days changed the rhythm of Ethan Hale's life in ways he did not expect. Wherever he went on the station, Leary followed. If he stopped at a console, she stood close. If he walked through a busy corridor, she stayed at his side, her small hand gripping his sleeve. When others came too near, she shifted closer, eyes alert and tense, like a creature always ready to flee. At first, Ethan thought it would fade. Shock did strange things to people. He assumed time would loosen her fear. It did not. Instead, something deeper took root. Station workers noticed immediately. Humans already stood out among the taller, heavier alien species, but a tiny alien maid staying glued to one like a shadow drew attention. Some watched with curiosity, others with annoyance. "She is disrupting workflow," a tall, insect-like supervisor complained one morning. "Servant species are not meant to form attachments." Ethan kept his voice calm. "She's still doing her job." "Barely," the supervisor replied. "She watches you more than she cleans." Leary lowered her head, fingers tightening on Ethan's sleeve. Ethan felt the tension and spoke firmly. "She saved my section during the breach. If there's a problem, file it properly." The supervisor clicked its mandibles in irritation but moved on. Ethan knelt slightly and spoke quietly to Leary. "You don't have to hold on all the time." "I'm not going anywhere." She shook her head. "If I release," she said softly, "the void remembers." Ethan did not fully understand her words, but he understood the fear behind them. That evening, he requested access to cultural archives. If Leary's behavior meant something deeper, he wanted to know. What he found unsettled him. Leary's species, the Keshari, were classified as a low-impact service race. Their homeworld's low gravity had shaped fragile bodies and short lifespans. Long ago, stronger species had decided the Keshari were better used than protected. Over time, laws formed around that idea. The archives mentioned something called anchor bonding. It was rare. When a Keshari faced certain death and another willingly risked their life to save them, a bond could form. Not romantic, not ownership. Something closer to survival instinct mixed with deep trust. The anchor became safety itself. Most species discouraged it. Humans, Ethan realized, had no such rule. The next morning, station administration summoned him. The council chamber was wide and cold, filled with representatives from different species. Ethan stood alone at the center. Leary waited outside, security insisting she remain behind. She looked frightened when the doors closed. Ethan did not like that. "Human Ethan Hale," the council speaker said, "your actions during the breach are noted and appreciated." "Thank you," Ethan replied. "However," another voice added, "your continued association with a bonded servant is a concern." "She's not a concern," Ethan said calmly. "She's a person." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. "The Keshari are classified as auxiliary labor," the speaker replied. "Emotional dependency creates inefficiency." Ethan lifted his chin. "She almost died. Anyone would struggle after that." "You do not understand," a reptilian counselor said. "Her bond is permanent." "Then maybe the problem isn't her," Ethan said. "Maybe it's how you treat her." Silence followed. Finally, the council decided on a compromise. Leary would remain assigned to Ethan's section temporarily. Her behavior would be monitored. Ethan left the chamber with mixed feelings. When the doors opened, Leary rushed to him, clutching his arm with visible relief. "They tried to separate us," she asked quietly. "Not today," Ethan said. She nodded, leaning closer. Word spread quickly through the station. A human had challenged the council over a servant. Some mocked him, others watched more carefully. A few days later, trouble came again, not as sudden as the airlock breach. Slower, more dangerous. Unidentified cargo ships docked without proper clearance. Security grew tense, patrols doubled. Whispers of smugglers moved through the lower decks. Ethan noticed changes in the station's mood. Guards lingered, systems lagged, something felt wrong. During a routine check near the power conduits, the lights flickered. Leary froze, her grip tightened. "Ethan," she whispered, "something is coming." Before he could respond, the corridor shook. A distant explosion echoed through the metal walls. Emergency lights flashed red. "Unauthorized access detected," the station announced. Security response delayed. Ethan cursed under his breath. They were far from the safe zones. Smoke filled the hall ahead. Shapes moved through it, armed figures in heavy gear, not station security. Smugglers. They fired at a control panel, sparks flying. The station groaned as systems failed. Ethan pulled Leary behind a structural support. "Stay close," he said. She nodded, fear clear in her eyes, but she did not panic. She trusted him. One smuggler turned, spotting movement. "There!" the figure shouted. Ethan's mind raced. He was unarmed. Running would expose Leary. So he did what humans had always done best. He adapted. He grabbed a loose conduit rod and slammed it into the floor, triggering a burst of steam from a damaged pipe. The corridor filled with hissing vapor, obscuring vision. "Move," Ethan said. They ran. Leary struggled to keep up, her short strides uneven. Without thinking, Ethan scooped her up against his chest and ran full speed. Blaster fire scorched the wall behind them. Ethan took a sharp turn into a maintenance shaft, slamming the panel shut behind them. Darkness surrounded them, broken only by dim emergency lights. They hid there, breathing hard. Leary pressed her face into his shoulder. "You are not afraid," she said quietly. "I am," Ethan replied. "I just don't let it stop me." The smugglers moved past, unaware. Minutes later, station security finally arrived, driving them back. The crisis ended without full disaster, but damage was heavy. Power failures, injured civilians, panic everywhere. Ethan emerged from the shaft carrying Leary. Other aliens stared. They had seen him run into danger, not away from it. Later, as emergency teams worked, an elder alien approached Ethan. Tall, scarred, respected. "You protected the small one," the elder said. Ethan nodded. "Of course." "In many cultures," the elder continued, "that would be seen as foolish." "Then maybe those cultures are wrong," Ethan said simply. The elder studied him for a long moment, then inclined its head. Leary looked up at Ethan, her eyes no longer filled with fear. Something stronger lived there now: trust. That night she slept not on the floor but on a cushion near his bed, still close but calmer. For the first time since the breach, her hands relaxed. The station had seen something it could not easily forget. A human did not protect the weak because rules demanded it. He did it because he chose to. And that choice was beginning to change everything. The station did not return to normal after the smuggler attack. Repairs continued day and night. Corridors were sealed, rerouted, reopened, then sealed again. Security patrols became heavier, slower, and more nervous. Many species no longer trusted the station's safety systems. Fear spread quietly, like a shadow that never fully left. Ethan felt it everywhere he went. Leary felt it more. She stayed close, but something about her had changed since the attack. She no longer trembled at every alarm. Her steps were steadier. Her eyes still watched the surroundings, but now they also watched Ethan, not just for safety but for guidance. She had chosen him as her anchor, and now the station was beginning to notice what that truly meant. A notice appeared on Ethan's terminal one morning. Mandatory Assessment, Cultural Oversight Division. He frowned. "That's new." Leary leaned in slightly. "Is this bad?" "I don't know yet," Ethan said, "but we'll face it together." They were escorted to a white, silent chamber deep inside the administrative ring. Smooth walls, no windows, observation nodes embedded high above. 3 officials waited, different species, same cold expressions. "Human Ethan Hale," one said. "Keshari Unit Leary." Leary stiffened at the word unit. Ethan noticed. "We are here to evaluate the stability of the anchor bond," another official said. "This condition presents operational risks." "She's not a condition," Ethan replied calmly. "She's a person." "That is not how the law defines her," the official answered. Leary's fingers tightened on Ethan's sleeve. The officials began asking questions. Did Ethan feel responsible for Leary's emotional state? Yes. Would he prioritize her safety over station protocol? Yes. Would he endanger himself again if required? Yes, Ethan said without hesitation. The officials exchanged looks. "This confirms our concern," one said. "Human emotional patterns are excessive." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Caring doesn't make us unstable." "It makes you unpredictable," the official replied. They turned their attention to Leary. "Keshari Unit," one said. "If ordered to separate from your anchor, would you comply?" Leary's breath caught. She looked at Ethan. Then she shook her head. "I cannot," she said softly. "If separated, my mind fractures, my body follows." Silence filled the chamber. "That response is unacceptable," the official said. Ethan stepped forward. "You're talking about forced separation. That's cruelty." "This bond violates long-standing station law," another official said. "It must be dissolved." Ethan felt anger rise, but before he could speak, Leary did something no one expected. She let go of Ethan's sleeve. The room seemed to hold its breath. Leary stepped forward on her own. "I am small," she said quietly. "I am not strong, but I am alive because a human chose me." She looked up at the officials. "If you break this bond," she continued, "you will not gain order. You will create harm." Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "We Keshari survive by adapting. Humans survive by protecting. Together we are stable." The officials did not respond right away. Finally, one spoke. "This hearing is concluded. Further review will follow." They were dismissed. Outside the chamber, Leary's legs gave out. Ethan caught her before she fell. "That took courage," he said softly. "I was afraid," she admitted, "but I remembered the void and your hands." That night, unrest spread across the lower decks. Power fluctuations returned. Security reports contradicted each other. Then the truth emerged. The smugglers had not been fully removed. They had help. A group within the station's own infrastructure, disgruntled contractors, forgotten species, those treated as disposable, had sided with them. They planned to seize control of the station's core systems and sell access to the highest bidder. Evacuation orders were considered, then rejected. Too many ships, too many civilians. The station would stand or fall where it was. Ethan was called into an emergency response group, not because of rank but because of results. Humans, he noticed, were being pulled into leadership roles more often now. "Your section runs smoothly under pressure," a commander said. "We need that." Ethan agreed, but only on one condition. "Leary stays with me," he said. There was hesitation, then a nod. They moved toward the central operations ring. Along the way, chaos erupted. Explosions rocked distant sections. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut. Smoke poured into corridors filled with fleeing civilians. Leary helped where she could, guiding smaller beings, translating warnings, calming panic. She stayed close to Ethan but no longer hid behind him. At one junction, security forces hesitated. The path ahead led directly to a compromised control node. "Too risky," an officer said. "We'll wait for reinforcements." Ethan looked at the flickering lights. He thought of the council chamber, of laws written by those who never fell. "We don't have time," he said. He turned to Leary. "Stay behind me." She shook her head. "I will stay beside you." They moved. Blaster fire erupted. Systems sparked and screamed. Ethan used the environment, doors, panels, gravity shifts to their advantage. He was hit once, a glancing shot that burned but didn't stop him. Leary dragged a fallen power cell out of the way so others could pass. She did not scream. She did not freeze. She trusted. They reached the control node just as smugglers attempted a final override. Ethan tackled one attacker. Another turned toward Leary. Ethan reacted instantly, placing himself between them. The attacker hesitated. That moment was enough. Security flooded the area. The smugglers were overwhelmed. The station core was secured. Afterward, medics treated the wounded. Fires were extinguished. Emergency systems stabilized. Ethan sat against a wall, exhausted. Leary sat beside him. "You are hurt," she said. "I'll live," he replied. She placed her hand over his. "You did not let the station break," she said. Ethan shook his head. "We did." Across the station, something shifted. Officials could no longer deny what everyone had seen. Humans did not create chaos through care. They created stability through it. Leary was no longer just a servant clinging to a human. She was proof. Proof that strength was not measured by size. Proof that survival did not mean standing alone. And proof that when the galaxy pushed humans to choose between rules and lives, humans would always choose lives. The council would have to respond. And whatever they decided next would echo far beyond the station's walls. The station was quiet in a way that made Ethan uneasy. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The strained kind that came after disaster, when everyone waited to see what would happen next. Emergency lights were gone. Systems were stable. Patrols moved with purpose again. But the feeling remained, like the station was holding its breath. Ethan felt it as he walked through the central ring with Leary at his side. People watched them now, not with mockery. Not with annoyance, with thought. Some nodded slightly. Some stepped aside without being asked. Others whispered, but not cruelly. The human and the tiny Keshari had become symbols, whether they wanted to or not. That made the council nervous. Ethan was summoned again 2 days after the core was secured. This time he was not alone. Leary walked beside him openly. No one tried to stop her. The council chamber looked the same, but the mood did not. The officials sat straighter. Their voices were careful. "Human Ethan Hale," the speaker began. "Keshari citizen Leary, citizen." The word landed softly, but it mattered. "You are both aware," the speaker continued, that recent events have forced a review of station law. Ethan said nothing. Leary's hand rested lightly against his arm, not clinging, just present. Multiple witnesses confirmed that your actions prevented catastrophic loss, another counselor said. This cannot be ignored, nor can the instability your bond represents, a third added. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You still think caring is the problem. We think precedent is the problem, the counselor replied. If one servant species gains status through attachment, others will demand the same. Good, Ethan said simply. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Leary took a small step forward. We do not demand, she said calmly. We demonstrate. The council allowed her to speak. She told them about her life before the station, about being assigned, transferred, replaced, about learning early that survival meant being quiet, small, unnoticed. And then, she said, a human saw me fall, and he did not look away. The chamber was silent. He did not save me because of law, Leary continued. He saved me because I mattered. Some counselors shifted uncomfortably. That was when the interruption came. Alarms different from before, sharper, more urgent. A security officer rushed in. Counselors, we have a situation. The station's external sensors had detected incoming ships, not smugglers this time. Warships, a neighboring coalition, one that had long considered the station a weak point, had seen the recent instability as opportunity. They were demanding control access to ensure regional security. In truth, it was an occupation. Panic spread through the chamber. Our defenses are not prepared, one counselor said. We cannot fight a fleet. Another hissed, if we resist, they will destroy the station. And if we surrender, Ethan said quietly, they will take everything. The council turned to him. You are a logistics officer, one said, not a military commander. No, Ethan agreed. But humans have faced this choice before. Silence. Then one counselor asked, what do you propose? Ethan took a breath. We show them who we are, he said, not through weapons. Through unity, he explained quickly. The station housed dozens of species, many treated as expendable, many angry, many skilled. If united, they could outthink any invading force, not by fighting head-on but by denying control. They expect fear, Ethan said. Let's give them cooperation they can't control. It was risky, but there were no better options. The council agreed. Across the station, a call went out, not an order but an invitation. Volunteers stepped forward. Engineers from ignored species rerouted power in ways only they understood. Dockworkers sealed and shifted ports. Translators coordinated across languages that had never shared command channels before. Humans acted as connectors, not rulers. Leary became one of them. She moved through lower decks, speaking to Keshari and others like them, those who had always been told they were small. Stay calm, she told them. Stay together. When the warships arrived, they found a station that did not behave as expected. Docking requests were delayed, not refused, but redirected. Navigation data shifted subtly. Communications were answered politely but slowly. The invaders grew impatient. They attempted a forced interface and found nothing worked as planned. Systems responded, but not in ways that allowed control. Locks opened into empty bays. Power surged where it was useless and dimmed where it mattered. The station was alive, and it resisted without firing a shot. Hours passed. Finally, the coalition fleet withdrew. The risk was too high, the station too unpredictable. Cheers echoed through the corridors, not loud ones, quiet, relieved ones. Afterward, the council reconvened. This time they stood when Ethan and Leary entered. We have reached a decision, the speaker said. The Keshari would no longer be classified as a servant species. Anchor bonding would be recognized, protected, not controlled. And more than that, species once labeled auxiliary would be given representation. The station would change. Ethan felt the weight of it settle in his chest. Leary looked up at him, her eyes bright. Not with fear, not with dependence, with pride. Later, as they stood near a viewport watching ships depart, Leary spoke softly. "I no longer cling," she said. Ethan smiled. "You don't need to." She nodded. "But I will stay." "So will I," he replied. The galaxy had tried to measure strength in size, in weapons, in control. The station had shown another truth. Strength was choosing not to let go. And humanity had reminded everyone what that choice could change. The station's corridors were quieter than usual after the council's announcement, but the calm felt different now. Not fragile, not fearful, but steady. A quiet strength had settled over K-17, the kind that came from surviving what no one expected. Ethan walked through the central ring with Leary at his side. She no longer clung to him out of fear. Instead, she moved with confidence, her steps light but assured. Other workers gave them respectful nods. Some of the smaller species even paused to smile at them, something rare on a station that had long ignored them. The council's decision had changed more than Leary's status. It had sparked conversations across the decks about fairness, respect, and the strength that came from protecting those weaker than oneself. Humans were no longer just seen as fragile outsiders. Their willingness to act for others without thought for rank or law had earned respect that rippled through every species present. "Ethan," Leary said softly as they passed a busy junction, "you have changed many lives here." Ethan glanced down at her. "Not just me." "You helped too," she shook her head. "I only followed. You showed what courage looks like. You taught what it means to protect, not command." They reached the observation deck, a wide platform with windows looking out into the endless black of space. Ships passed silently in the distance, some carrying goods, others passengers. Stars sparkled beyond the glass, cold and distant, yet somehow inviting. "I used to think humans were small, weak, disposable," Leary said quietly, watching a freighter glide past. "Now I understand. Strength is in choice. Strength is in taking responsibility for another life." Ethan smiled. "You've learned that fast." She shook her head, but a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "No, you have shown me. I only survived because of you. Not just my body, but my mind and my heart." Ethan's hand brushed lightly against hers. "We survived together." Across the station, reports came in that the story of a human protecting a tiny Keshari had spread beyond the docks and cargo bays. Traders passing through K-17 repeated the tale to distant systems, where humans were often underestimated. Across multiple galaxies, species began to rethink how they treated smaller, weaker, or auxiliary beings. Even the coalition fleet that had threatened K-17 could not ignore it. Intelligence officers noted how quickly the station had adapted, how the human and the Keshari had inspired cohesion among the ignored and undervalued. It was a human trait that could not be predicted. They fought not with brute strength but with choices, loyalty, and courage. Leary's life changed too. She was no longer just a maid. She gained citizenship, recognition, and a voice among her people. Yet she stayed by Ethan's side, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That bond, formed in the shadow of death, now became a quiet force for good on the station. Others looked to them for guidance, lessons, and hope. One afternoon, while walking through a corridor lined with newly repaired docks, they were approached by a group of young Keshari, smaller still than Leary had been. Their wide eyes held curiosity, admiration, and a hint of fear. "You saved us," one of them said softly. "You made us feel safe." Leary knelt down to meet them at eye level. "We are all stronger than we think," she said, "and now we must protect each other." Ethan watched, realizing how far they had come. Humans might not have had the physical advantage, but their courage and choice had changed minds, laws, and lives. That was true strength. Even the council, initially hesitant and wary, began to change. Policies were rewritten, roles reassessed, and species once overlooked were given opportunities they had never imagined. Humanity's actions, so simple yet so profound, had set an example. Not through conquest, not through rules, but through action that inspired trust, loyalty, and respect. Leary looked up at Ethan, her eyes calm and bright. "Will you always be here?" Ethan laughed softly. "I'll always be where I'm needed, and right now that's here." She smiled, and it was different from before, calm, confident, and free from fear. She had survived the void, the council, and the chaos of the station, not just because of him, but because they had faced everything together. Weeks passed, and life on the station stabilized. The corridors were alive with activity, but there was a new sense of equality. The small were no longer invisible, the timid no longer unheard. The bond between humans and other species became a symbol of what could happen when strength was measured not in power, but in courage, choice, and compassion. Ethan continued his work, checking systems, supervising shipments, and solving problems. Leary assisted him, her voice carrying authority among her peers. Other species sought guidance from both of them. Together, they became an example of cooperation that no rule, law, or council could dictate. Only human choice and action had created it. One evening, as the station's artificial sun dimmed into night mode, Leary and Ethan stood at the observation deck once more. Ships glided silently past, the hum of engines faint but steady. "You changed everything here," Leary said softly. "Not just me, not just Keshari. Everyone watches you now." Ethan shook his head. "We changed it together. You helped me just as I helped you." She reached out and held his hand, small but firm. "Then we continue together." "Yes," he said, "we continue together." Far beyond the station, traders and travelers carried their story to distant systems. Humans were no longer underestimated. Tiny, overlooked species were no longer ignored. Keshari children spoke of courage and choice. Other species whispered of the human who refused to let go, and of the tiny alien who learned to stand tall because someone believed in her. The galaxy shifted, slowly but unmistakably, and it all began with a single act of choice. A human had reached into the void, grabbed a small life, and refused to let go. Ethan looked at Leary, standing beside him, her eyes steady and bright. In them he saw not fear, not weakness, but strength, trust, and understanding. The bond that had begun in crisis had grown into something that reshaped their world. And in that moment, as the station lights glowed softly around them, Ethan knew that humanity would always leave a mark, not through force, but through courage, protection, and the choices they made when no one else would. Leary squeezed his hand lightly, a silent affirmation of what they had survived and what they would face next. The galaxy could test them again, but whatever came, they would face it together. Together, small and tall, weak and strong, human and alien, they had become more than survivors. They had become a force of change. And the station, once a place of rules and hierarchy, now pulsed with a new life. Life that believed in protection, in courage, in humanity. The tiny alien who once clung in fear now walked freely. The human who had reached into the void now stood proudly beside her. And the galaxy had begun to take notice.